A mother dog begs for help for a dying kitten. But what the vet did next shocked everyone. A stormy morning. A stray dog drags in a blanket. Inside, a tiny kitten, barely alive. The dog isn't its mother, yet she won't let anyone take it. Away. The vet faces an impossible choice. Save a life that everyone else has already given up on, or walk away. But when strange marks appear on the kitten's tiny body, a darker truth is revealed. This wasn't an accident. Someone wanted this animal to die. As secrets unravel and danger closes in, one question burns. Can the weakest life in the room expose the darkest heart of all? This channel isn't just about stories. It's about holding on to what still matters. Empathy, truth, love, and the courage to care. The rain hammered against the windows of the Mountain View Veterinary Clinic, turning the early Tennessee morning into a gloomy haze. Dr. Eliza Hartwell shook the water from her jacket as she stepped inside, breathing in the familiar smell of antiseptic and pet food that filled the waiting room. Her practical boots squeaked against the freshly mopped floor as she made her way to the front desk. "Just another quiet morning," she mumbled to herself, flipping through the day's appointment book. The pages showed only routine checkups and vaccinations scheduled, nothing that would challenge her skills or test her dedication to helping animals in need. The calm lasted exactly 3 minutes. The clinic's double doors burst open with a bang that made Eliza jump. Wind and rain whipped inside, along with something that made her heart stop. A medium-sized brown dog, soaking wet and limping, dragging what looked like a dirty blanket between its teeth. "Oh my goodness!" Eliza gasped, rushing forward. But as she approached, the dog's lips pulled back in a warning snarl, water dripping from its scarred muzzle. Despite its obvious exhaustion, the animal planted itself firmly, protecting whatever lay wrapped in that filthy bundle. "Easy there," Eliza said softly, crouching down to the dog's level. "I want to help." The dog's dark eyes studied her, filled with both desperation and fierce determination. Slowly, carefully, it lowered the blanket to the floor. When Eliza inched closer, her breath caught in her throat. Curled inside the wet fabric was a tiny gray tabby kitten, its body so still she couldn't tell if it was even breathing. "That's impossible," she whispered. The sight of a stray dog protecting a kitten went against everything she'd learned about natural instincts. Yet here it was. This battle-scarred mother dog had somehow decided this helpless kitten needed saving. Eliza reached out one hand, but the dog growled deep in its chest. "I understand," she said gently. "You've worked so hard to protect this little one. But now you need to trust me." The sound of heavy footsteps behind her made both Eliza and the dog tense up. "What's all this commotion?" Dr. Carl Redmond's sharp voice cut through the air. He stood in the doorway to his office, his expensive watch glinting against his worn clinic coat. His gray hair was perfectly styled despite the humid weather, but his face twisted with annoyance at the puddles of water on his clean floor. "Sir, we have an emergency," Eliza said, not taking her eyes off the protective dog. "This stray brought in a kitten. It's barely alive." Dr. Redmond barely glanced at the scene before waving his hand dismissively. "Don't waste your time, Dr. Hartwell. That kitten's a hopeless case if I ever saw one. Have animal control collect the stray and dispose of the body." The mother dog's growl grew louder at his cold words. Eliza felt something spark inside her, a determination that matched the fierce protection in the dog's eyes. "The kitten's still breathing," she insisted, catching the slight rise and fall of its tiny chest. "We can't just give up without trying." "I said no," Dr. Redmond snapped. "This is a business, not a charity. That dog is dangerous, and that kitten is more dead than alive. I won't have you wasting resources on lost causes." But Eliza couldn't move. She stayed crouched there, looking between the loyal dog who'd fought so hard to find help and the tiny kitten clinging to life. In that moment, she saw everything that had drawn her to veterinary medicine in the first place. The belief that every life, no matter how small or seemingly hopeless, deserved a chance. The mother dog whimpered softly, nudging the blanket toward Eliza with its nose. Those intelligent eyes seemed to plead with her, asking for the help it had traveled through the storm to find. Despite Dr. Redmond's dismissal, despite the long odds, Eliza felt her heart answering that plea. Rain continued to pour outside, but inside the clinic, time seemed to stand still as woman, dog, and dying kitten faced off against the cold logic of profit and practicality. In that frozen moment, Eliza knew she would have to make a choice: follow orders or follow her conscience. The kitten let out a tiny, weak mewl, barely audible above the storm. But it was enough to prove it was fighting for life, and enough to strengthen Eliza's resolve to fight alongside it. The dog's dark eyes studied her, filled with both fear and desperate hope. With agonizing slowness, it loosened its grip on the bundle, allowing the sodden blanket to fall open. Inside lay a tiny gray tabby kitten, its body barely moving. "Let me see, little one," Eliza whispered, her heart clenching at the sight. The kitten's breath came in shallow gasps, its tiny body cold and limp. Without hesitation, she slipped off her white coat and wrapped it around the fragile creature. Jonas Pike appeared at her side, his lanky frame folding down next to her. "What do you need, Dr. Hartwell?" "Warming blankets, stat, and get me the pediatric vital monitor." Eliza cradled the kitten close, feeling its thready pulse against her palm. The mother dog whined anxiously, pressing against her leg as if trying to see what was happening to her adopted baby. Jonas rushed to gather supplies while Eliza carried the kitten to the examination room, the dog following close behind. She worked quickly, connecting the tiny monitor leads while trying to raise the kitten's dangerously low body temperature. The dog's worried eyes never left her hands. "What's all this commotion?" Dr. Carl Redmond's sharp voice cut through the room. He stood in the doorway, his face darkening as he took in the scene. "Eliza, what are you doing with these strays?" The kitten's critical but responding to warmth, Eliza reported professionally, though her hands trembled slightly. "With immediate intervention, we might have a chance." "A chance?" Redmond scoffed. "That thing's barely alive. We're not a charity, doctor. We have paying clients scheduled in 30 minutes. Sir, I can't just—" "You can, and you will." Redmond's voice hardened. "This clinic operates on tight margins. Every supply you waste on hopeless cases is money down the drain. Put it down humanely if you must, but we're not spending resources on strays." Eliza's throat tightened as she looked down at the tiny patient fighting for life in her hands. The mother dog pressed closer, letting out a low whimper that seemed to pierce straight through her heart. Jonas appeared in the doorway, arms full of supplies. He paused, reading the tension in the room, but didn't retreat. Instead, he moved quietly to the supply cabinet, beginning to sort through materials. "Dr. Redmond," Eliza said carefully, "I understand the financial concerns, but as healers, don't we have an obligation to help when we can? This kitten still has a chance." "Your bleeding heart will bankrupt us, Eliza." Redmond shook his head. "Clear this room and prepare for actual patients." He turned on his heel and stalked out. As soon as Redmond's footsteps faded, Jonas stepped forward. "I might have some supplies set aside," he said softly. "Things that were about to expire anyway. No one would miss them." Eliza met his eyes, seeing her own determination reflected there. The loyal vet assistant had worked at the clinic even longer than she had, and she knew he felt the same pull to help every animal that came through their doors. "The mother dog," Jonas continued, nodding toward the protective canine. "She went through so much to bring that kitten here. Seems wrong to give up when she wouldn't." The dog's tail wagged slightly at Jonas's gentle tone, though she remained pressed against Eliza's legs, guarding her precious charge. Her devotion to a creature that should have been her natural enemy touched something deep in both humans' hearts. We'll have to be careful, Eliza warned, even as she reached for the supplies Jonas offered. If Redmond finds out, let me worry about inventory, Jonas assured her. You focus on saving that little life. Together they worked quickly but carefully, getting fluids into the kitten's system and monitoring its vital signs. The mother dog slowly relaxed as she sensed their genuine desire to help, her anxious whines softening to gentle huffs of encouragement. There you go, little fighter, Eliza murmured as the kitten's breathing steadied slightly. Your mama didn't bring you all this way for nothing. The choice to defy Redmond wouldn't come without consequences. Eliza knew that, but watching the mother dog's unwavering vigil over her adopted baby, she couldn't bring herself to regret it. Some things mattered more than money and rules. With Jonas's quiet support and the dog's inspiring example of loyalty, she would find a way to give this tiny patient its chance at life. Eliza's hands trembled slightly as she worked, her fingers gently parting the kitten's wet fur. The tiny creature barely stirred, its breaths coming in shallow gasps. The mother dog sat close by, her anxious whimpers filling the examination room, while Jonas kept a reassuring hand on her head. There's something wrong here, Eliza murmured, leaning closer to examine the kitten's face under the bright exam light. Her heart skipped a beat as she noticed unusual marks around its tiny mouth, angry red patches that didn't match with normal illness or injury. Jonas, look at this. Jonas stepped closer, careful not to startle the watchful dog. What am I looking at, Dr. Hartwell? These burns. Eliza carefully lifted one of the kitten's tiny paws, revealing similar reddened patches. They're chemical. Burns. And look at the pattern. Around the mouth. On the paws. This wasn't an accident. Her stomach churned as the pieces fell into place. Someone poisoned this kitten. Jonas's face darkened. Are you sure? Who would do something like that? The burns tell the story. It probably ate or stepped in something toxic. Maybe pesticides or antifreeze. The pattern suggests it was in food. Eliza reached for a blood collection kit, her movements precise despite her rising anger. We need to run some tests to be sure. But tests? Dr. Redmond's sharp voice cut through the room. He stood in the doorway, arms crossed. I thought I made myself clear about wasting resources. Eliza straightened up, meeting his gaze. This kitten was deliberately poisoned. That changes things. Does it? Redmond's lip curled. Or are you letting your imagination run wild? Not. Every sick stray is a victim of foul play, Dr. Hartwell. Sometimes animals just die. That's nature. These are chemical burns, Eliza insisted, gesturing to the evidence. Look for yourself. Redmond waved her off. What I see is a young vet getting emotional over a lost cause. Don't go stirring up nonsense about poisonings and conspiracies. This clinic's reputation matters more than your theories about one stray dog. Kitten. The mother dog growled low in her throat, sensing the tension. Jonas quickly soothed her while Eliza fought to keep her voice steady. Our job is to help animals in need. If someone is deliberately harming them, our job, Redmond cut in, is to serve our paying clients and maintain this clinic's standing in the community. I won't have you spreading wild accusations that could damage that. He turned to leave, pausing in the doorway. Handle this however you want on your own time, Dr. Hartwell. But remember, there are consequences for stirring up trouble where there is none. The threat in his voice was unmistakable. Eliza waited until his footsteps faded before releasing a shaky breath. She looked down at the kitten, so small and vulnerable on the exam table. The mother dog pressed against her leg, as if offering support. He's wrong, Jonas said quietly. About all of it. Eliza nodded, her resolve hardening. Yes, he is. And we're going to prove it. She began gathering supplies with renewed purpose. First, we save this kitten. Then we find out who did this, and why Dr. Redmond is so determined to keep it quiet. The mother dog's tail wagged slightly, her intelligent eyes fixed on Eliza, as if she understood. Together, they formed an unlikely team, a determined vet, a loyal assistant, a protective dog, and one tiny fighter of a kitten, united against something darker than they yet understood. Working quickly but carefully, Eliza started the necessary treatments while Jonas documented the burns with photographs. The kitten's life still hung, by a thread, but now they were fighting for more than just its survival. They were challenging a system that would turn its back on the helpless and uncovering truths someone wanted to keep hidden. Rain continued to drum against the windows as Eliza worked, each drop a reminder of the storm that had brought this moment of revelation. What had started as a simple act of compassion was becoming something far more complex and potentially dangerous. But looking at the tiny patient before her, Eliza knew there was no turning back. Eliza's fingers moved swiftly through the supply cabinets, searching for anything that might help the struggling kitten. Her heart sank as she found lock after lock on the cabinets containing the stronger medications they desperately needed. Dr. Redmond had been thorough in restricting access. "I can't believe this," she muttered, closing another cabinet door. "Jonas, we'll have to work with what we have." Jonas nodded grimly, already gathering basic supplies, oxygen tubing, bags of intravenous fluids, and warm blankets. "We can improvise, Dr. Hartwell. Sometimes the simplest things make the biggest difference." The mother dog hadn't moved from her spot beside the examination table, her watchful eyes following their every movement. Her matted fur was still damp from the rain, but she seemed indifferent to her own discomfort. When Eliza approached with, "The supplies?" the dog's ears perked forward, but she didn't growl this time. "That's right, girl," Eliza said softly. "We're trying to help." As they worked to set up the oxygen, the kitten's breathing became more labored. Its tiny chest barely rose with each breath, and its grayish tongue showed signs of poor circulation. Eliza's stomach twisted with worry. "We're losing ground," Jonas warned, his voice tight with concern. Just then, the clinic's front door chimed. Marjorie Kettle stepped in, carrying her familiar feed sack. The elderly woman's weathered face creased with concern as she took in the scene. "What's all this, then?" she asked, setting down her burden. "A mother dog brought in this kitten," Eliza explained quickly, her hands steady as she adjusted the oxygen flow. "It's been poisoned, Marjorie. We're doing what we can, but—" "Poisoned, you say?" Marjorie's expression darkened. She moved closer, studying the scene with knowing eyes. "Wouldn't be the first time we've seen that around here lately." The kitten suddenly went limp, its head lolling to one side. The mother dog let out a low whine, nudging the little body with her nose. "No, no, no," Eliza whispered, reaching for her stethoscope. The heartbeat was there, but barely. She had seconds to make a decision. "Jonas, grab the emergency epinephrine kit," she ordered. It wasn't ideal. The dose would be tricky for something so small, but they were out of options. Dr. Redmond won't. "Like that?" Jonas hesitated, though he was already moving toward the drawer. "Dr. Redmond isn't here right now," Eliza replied firmly, "and I'm not losing this kitten." As Jonas handed her the kit, Marjorie stepped closer, her voice low and urgent. "You should know, dear. There's been talk. Pets going missing around Miller's Creek. Others turning up sick. Nobody's proved anything, but—" Eliza calculated the tiny dose while listening. The mother dog pressed against her leg, as if lending strength. With steady hands, Eliza administered the injection, holding her breath as they waited. Seconds ticked by. The mother dog's tail thumped once against the floor. Then the kitten twitched, drawing a stronger breath. "That's it," Eliza encouraged, stroking the tiny head. "Keep fighting." Jonas sagged with relief while Marjorie nodded approvingly. "You've got good instincts, Dr. Hartwell. This county needs more folks willing to stand up for the helpless ones." "What exactly have you been—" "Hearing, Marjorie?" Eliza asked, keeping her voice low as she monitored the kitten's strengthening heartbeat. The older woman glanced toward the door before answering. Let's just say some people care more about profit than doing right. And some matters that look like accidents might not be so accidental after all. The mother dog's ears pricked up at voices in the hallway. She positioned herself between the door and the examination table, her protective stance unwavering despite her obvious exhaustion. "We should get her some water," Jonas suggested, watching the dog with growing admiration. Never seen anything like this. A dog protecting a cat this way. "Love doesn't care about categories," Marjorie remarked, reaching into her feed sack. "Here, I've got some clean bowls in here. Let's at least make sure this brave mama gets taken care of while she stands guard." As they worked to stabilize the kitten and care for its unlikely protector, Eliza felt a web of connections forming. Between the animals, between the people willing to help, between scattered pieces of information that hinted at something darker. The mother dog's devotion had sparked something that couldn't be undone. Whatever happened next, Eliza knew she was committed to seeing it through. Eliza's fingers trembled as she rummaged through the supply cabinets, finding lock after lock on the doors containing the stronger medications they desperately needed. Dr. Redmond had been thorough in restricting access. "We'll have to make do with what we have," Jonas whispered, glancing nervously at the door while preparing another bag of warm fluids. The mother dog hadn't moved from her spot next to the examination table, her watchful eyes fixed on the tiny gray bundle barely breathing under the warming lamp. Heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway. Dr. Redmond burst through the door, his face flushed with anger. "This ends now, Dr. Hartwell. You're wasting valuable clinic resources on a lost cause. With all due respect, sir, this kitten has a fighting chance." Eliza stood her ground, though her voice quivered slightly. "I took an oath to help animals in need. And I sign your paychecks." Redmond stepped closer, lowering his voice. "One more act of defiance, and you can find somewhere else to practice medicine. Am I clear?" The mother dog growled low in her throat, sensing the tension. Redmond shot her a dark look before storming out, slamming the door behind him. Jonas placed a gentle hand on Eliza's shoulder. "Maybe he's right. This is getting risky." "I need to check his office," Eliza whispered, her jaw set with determination. "There has to be something we can use in there. Watch the kitten?" While Jonas monitored the fragile patient, Eliza slipped into Redmond's office. Her hands shook as she quickly searched through his desk drawers. In the bottom drawer, beneath a stack of files, she found a thick folder filled with feed invoices. Her heart nearly stopped as she noticed Redmond's signature on orders for industrial-grade chemicals that had no place in a small-town veterinary clinic. The kitten's vital signs showed slight improvement under the warming lamp and fluids. Its tiny chest rose and fell with stronger breaths, and its half-closed eyes seemed more alert. Hope flickered in Eliza's chest as she watched Jonas check the IV line. The moment of relief was short-lived. Redmond's voice boomed from the doorway. "What did you take from my office?" Eliza's blood ran cold, but she kept her expression neutral. "Nothing, Dr. Redmond. I was looking for more gauze supplies." His eyes narrowed dangerously. "Don't play games with me, Hartwell. I saw you sneaking around in there." The mother dog stood up, hackles raised, positioning herself between Redmond and the examination table. The tension in the room was thick, enough to cut with a knife. Jonas stepped forward, his usually quiet demeanor strained. "Dr. Hartwell, we need to talk." He gestured toward the hallway, his eyes pleading. Once outside, Jonas ran a nervous hand through his hair. "This is getting dangerous, Eliza. I've worked here long enough to know when Redmond's truly angry. Whatever you found in there, it's not worth losing your job over." Eliza pulled him further down the hall, her voice barely above a whisper. "Jonas, those invoices I found, they're not normal supply orders. Something's very wrong here, and I think it's connected to what happened to that kitten." "You can't prove anything," Jonas warned, glancing anxiously over his shoulder. "Maybe not yet," Eliza admitted. But the truth needs to come out. That kitten didn't poison itself. And if Redmond's involved... She took a deep breath. I can't just look the other way. Back in the exam room, the mother dog wagged her tail, slightly as they returned, never taking her eyes off her adopted charge. The kitten had curled into a slightly tighter ball under the warming lamp, a small but encouraging sign of growing strength. Eliza knew she was treading on dangerous ground, but watching that tiny creature fight for life with every breath, she couldn't back down now. The proof was there in those invoices, and somehow she would find a way to expose whatever dark secret Redmond was hiding. She just had to figure out how to do it without losing everything she'd worked for. The storm rolled in just after sunset, bringing sheets of rain that drummed against the windows of Eliza's small apartment. Lightning flickered across the sky, casting brief, harsh shadows through her curtains. She paced in front of her window, unable to shake the nagging feeling. About those invoices she'd glimpsed in Redmond's office. Her phone buzzed. It was Jonas. Can't sleep either. The kitten? Meet me at the clinic in 20 minutes, she texted back. The drive through the stormy Tennessee night was treacherous. Eliza's windshield wipers worked overtime against the downpour as she navigated the dark country roads. When she pulled into the clinic's parking lot, Jonas was already there, huddled under the building's small overhang. We shouldn't be doing this, he whispered as she unlocked the back door, but he followed her inside anyway. The clinic was eerily quiet except for the storm's muffled rage outside. They made their way to the recovery room first, where the kitten lay in its heated enclosure. The mother dog lifted her head as they entered, recognizing them with a soft woof of greeting. Hey, sweet girl, Eliza murmured, checking the kitten's vital signs. Its breathing was slightly stronger than earlier, though still labored. The tiny creature had made it through another day. Barely. I'll stay with them, Jonas offered. Go find what you need to find. Eliza nodded, slipping down the hallway, toward Redmond's office. Lightning flashed through the windows, making her jump. The thunder that followed masked the sound of her picking the office door lock, a skill she'd learned in vet school for emergency situations, never imagining she'd use it like this. Inside Redmond's office, she pulled out her phone's flashlight and headed straight for the bottom drawer. The folder of invoices was still there, and this time she had time to read them properly. Her hands trembled as she spread the papers across his desk. What she found made her sick to her stomach. The invoices detailed bulk purchases of industrial-grade pesticides, chemicals that should never be anywhere near animal feed. But there were matching delivery records to local farms with the chemicals listed as feed supplements. Dozens of farms, hundreds of animals potentially affected. Jonas, she called softly. You need to see this. He appeared in the doorway, leaving the door to the recovery room open so they could hear if the kitten needed them. What did you find? Look at these dates. Eliza pointed to a series of invoices. 3 months ago, he started ordering these chemicals, and here, she pulled out another stack of papers. Reports of mysterious animal deaths started showing up 2 weeks later. Thunder crashed overhead as Jonas leaned in to read. But why would he? The replacement orders, Eliza's voice, was tight with anger. Every time animals died, the farms ordered new stock. New vaccines, new treatments, all through our clinic. Lightning illuminated the room again, and in that brief flash they saw the full scope of Redmond's scheme laid out before them. He'd been poisoning animals slowly, creating a constant stream of emergency cases and grieving farmers willing to pay anything to save their remaining livestock. The kitten must have gotten into some of the tainted feed, Jonas realized. That's why the chemical burns around its mouth looked so familiar. I've seen the same marks on other animals that came through here. Eliza's mind raced back through recent cases. Horses with mysterious ailments, cattle dropping unexpectedly, pets becoming violently ill after visiting farms. We have to stop this. It'll be your word against his, Jonas warned. He's been here 20 years, Eliza. He knows everyone in the county. Then we'll need proof. She pulled out her phone and started taking pictures of every document, every invoice, every delivery record. The storm continued its assault outside, as if nature itself was raging against the corruption they'd uncovered. A weak meow from the recovery room drew their attention. The kitten was stirring, its tiny body fighting against the poison still working its way out of its system. The mother dog stood watch, her dedication unchanged by the late hour or the storm's fury. Eliza walked over and gently stroked the kitten's head. You're not just fighting for yourself anymore, little one. You're fighting for all of them. What are you going to do? Jonas asked, his face pale in the dim light. What I have to do, Eliza replied, her voice finding strength despite her fear. Even if it cost me my career, I took an oath to protect animals, not to profit from their suffering. Another crash of thunder shook the building. In the recovery room, the mother dog pressed closer to the kitten's enclosure, while the tiny fighter inside continued its labored breathing. Looking at them, Eliza felt her resolve harden. The kitten had become more than just a patient. It was living proof of Redmond's crimes, and its survival would be a testament to the truth she now had to expose. We should get everything back exactly as we found it, Jonas said, helping her return the files to their proper places. He can't know we were here. As they carefully restored order to Redmond's office, Eliza's mind was already planning her next moves. She would need help, perhaps Marjorie Kitten, with her deep connections in the farming community. The local authorities would have to be involved, and somehow she would have to find a way to protect herself from Redmond's inevitable retaliation. The storm began to ease as they prepared to leave, the thunder growing more distant. Eliza took one last look at the kitten, peaceful now under its warming lamp. We'll be back first thing in the morning, she promised the mother dog, who thumped her tail in response. Are you sure about this? Jonas asked as they locked up. Once you start this fight? I've never been more sure of anything, Eliza replied, looking back at the dark clinic. That kitten found its way to us for a reason. Sometimes the smallest things show us what we need to fight for. The pre-dawn light crept through the clinic. Windows as Eliza and Jonas huddled over a makeshift schedule drawn on the back of an old invoice. They'd been there all night, planning every detail with the precision of battlefield commanders. If we alternate shifts, Eliza whispered, circling time slots with her pen, we can maintain 24-hour care for the kitten without arousing suspicion. I'll take the morning and evening rounds when Redmond's usually here. Jonas nodded, rubbing his tired eyes. I can cover midday and late night. Mrs. Kitten offered to help, too. She could bring supplies without drawing attention. The mother dog lay curled around the kitten's warming bed, her watchful eyes following their every movement. The tiny patient's condition had stabilized somewhat through the night, though recovery remained uncertain. Each breath still seemed like a battle, but there was a spark of life that refused to dim. We need to document everything, Eliza said, pulling out her phone to show Jonas the photos she'd taken. Every invoice, every poisoning case, every connection we can find. The sheriff will need concrete evidence. I've got a secure cloud account, Jonas offered. We can back up everything there, just in case. He paused, glancing nervously at the door. Redmond's going to figure out what we're doing sooner or later. Eliza's jaw tightened. I know. But we have to be smart about this. One wrong move and he'll destroy the evidence before we can prove anything. They worked methodically through the morning, creating detailed treatment logs for the kitten while carefully gathering more documentation. Jonas set up a hidden camera in the recovery room, angled to capture any unexpected visitors. Eliza organized their findings into a timeline, connecting dates of feed deliveries with reported poisoning cases. The morning sun was streaming through the windows when they heard Redmond's car pull into the parking lot. Eliza quickly shuffled, their notes into her bag while Jonas made himself busy with routine tasks. The mother dog's ears perked up at the sound of approaching footsteps. A low growl rumbled in her throat. Redmond burst through the door, his face thunderous. His eyes swept the room, taking in the still-breathing Kitten, the protective dog, and his 2 staff members trying to appear innocent. "Making yourself at home, Dr. Hartwell?" His voice dripped with barely contained rage. Quite early for someone who's not on call. Eliza met his gaze steadily. "Just checking on our critical patient, Dr. Redmond. Standard procedure." Standard procedure? He stepped, closer, looming over her. The mother dog's growl intensified. "Nothing about this situation is standard. You're undermining my authority, questioning my decisions, poking your nose where it doesn't belong." Jonas moved to stand beside Eliza, his presence supportive, though. His voice shook slightly. "We're just doing our jobs, sir, helping animals in need." Redmond's laugh was cold and sharp. "Your job is what I say it is, and I won't let some bleeding heart idealists ruin everything I've built here." He turned back to Eliza, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, Dr. Hartwell. This is my clinic, my territory. Cross me again and you'll regret it!" The mother dog lunged forward suddenly, snapping at Redmond's legs. He jumped back, cursing. "Control that beast, or I'll have animal control take care of it." "She's protecting her charge," Eliza said calmly, though her heart was racing. "Animals have good instincts about people, don't you think?" Redmond's face twisted with fury. "This is your final warning, Hartwell. Back off, or there will be consequences." He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Once his footsteps faded, Jonas released a shaky breath. "That was terrifying. Eliza, maybe we should be more careful." He seemed serious about those threats. Eliza knelt beside the mother dog, who was trembling with protective anger. The kitten mewed softly, disturbed by the confrontation. "We can't back down now, Jonas. He's getting desperate, which means we're close to exposing him. But what if he does something drastic? He could hurt you or the animals. That's exactly why we have to stop him." Eliza's voice was firm as she checked the kitten's vital signs. "He's already hurt so many animals with his greed. We can't let him hurt any more." They spent the next hour reinforcing their security measures. Jonas installed additional locks on the recovery room door while Eliza made copies of their evidence and stored them in multiple locations. The mother dog remained alert, her body tense as if expecting another attack. "We'll need to move faster now," Eliza said, reviewing their timeline. "Redmond knows we're on to something. He'll try to destroy the evidence or worse." Jonas looked up from his phone. "I've arranged a meeting with Sheriff Taylor tomorrow morning, early, before the clinic opens." "Good." Eliza gathered their documentation into a secure folder. "We'll need to keep the kitten stable through the night. I don't trust Redmond not to try something." The gravity of their situation settled over them like a heavy cloud. What had started as an effort to save one small life had evolved into a dangerous game of cat and mouse. Redmond's threats hung in the air, a promise of retribution that neither could ignore. Yet as Eliza watched the mother dog tenderly nuzzling the kitten, she felt her resolve strengthen. The bond between these unlikely companions, their fight for survival against all odds, reminded her why she became a vet in the first place. To heal, to protect, to stand up for those who couldn't defend themselves. "Whatever happens," she told Jonas, her voice steady, "we're doing the right thing. Redmond can threaten us all he wants, but we're not backing down." Jonas nodded, his earlier fear giving way to determination. "We're in this together. For them." He gestured to the mother dog and kitten, symbols of everything they were fighting to protect. They spent the remainder of the morning preparing for the battle ahead, knowing that Redmond's threats were just the beginning. The confrontation had made one thing clear: There would be no peaceful resolution. Either they would expose Redmond's crimes, or he would destroy them trying to keep his secrets. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the clinic windows as Eliza finished the kitten's antibiotic treatment. Her hands moved with practiced care, checking the tiny creature's improving vital signs. The mother dog dozed nearby, her watchful eyes opening at every small sound. The quiet shattered as the front door slammed with such force that the walls seemed to shake. Heavy, angry footsteps thundered down the hallway. "Get away from that animal!" Redmond's voice was ice-cold as he burst into the treatment room. His face was twisted with rage, a manila folder clutched in his white-knuckled grip. Eliza's heart hammered against her ribs. "Dr. Redmond, Shut up." He thrust the folder in her face. Inside were copies of the incriminating invoices she'd discovered. Proof of his involvement in the poisonings. "Found these in your locker. Been busy, haven't you?" The mother dog was instantly alert, hackles raised as she positioned herself between Eliza and Redmond. Her low growl filled the small room. "You had no right to go through my things, Eliza," said, trying to keep her voice steady as she backed away. She clutched the kitten protectively to her chest. Redmond's laugh was harsh. "Rights? You want to talk about rights while you're stealing my private files?" He moved to the counter where a bottle of alcohol and gauze sat near a lighter used for sterilizing instruments. "Let me show you what happens to evidence against me." He flicked the lighter, holding it to the folder's edge. The paper caught quickly, flames licking upward. The acrid smell of burning documents filled the air as he dropped the blazing folder. "Into a metal trash can." "No!" Eliza lunged for the can, but Redmond grabbed her arm roughly, spinning her around. The sudden movement sent her crashing into the medication cabinet. Glass vials rained down around her, shattering on the floor in a dangerous constellation of sharp edges and spilled medicines. "You really thought you could destroy me?" Redmond's fingers dug painfully into her arm as he shoved her against the counter. "Everything I've built?" His other hand reached for the kitten she still held. "Don't touch it." Eliza tried to twist away, but his grip was too strong. Glass crunched under her feet as she struggled. "I could let them all die, you know." His voice dropped to a menacing whisper. "Every stray that comes through that door. Every farm animal that needs help. One wrong medication, one accident with the anesthesia. How many animals would suffer because you couldn't mind your own business?" The mother dog's warning growl turned to action. She launched herself at Redmond, powerful jaws clamping down on his forearm. He howled in pain and rage, releasing Eliza. "To fight off the dog!" "Jonas!" Eliza screamed, clutching the frightened kitten close as she scrambled away from Redmond's reach. "Jonas! Help! Help!" Running footsteps pounded down the hall. Jonas burst in, taking in the scene with wide eyes. The burning papers, the shattered glass, Redmond wrestling with the mother dog, blood staining his sleeve where her teeth had found their mark. "Get the backup files!" Eliza shouted to Jonas. "Everything we copied, get it to the sheriff, now!" Jonas didn't hesitate. He turned and ran, his footsteps fading as Redmond finally threw off the mother dog. She hit the wall with a yelp, but immediately regained her feet, positioning herself once again between Eliza and danger. "You're finished!" Redmond snarled, pressing his bleeding arm against his chest. "Both of you are finished. I'll have your license for this, Hartwell. No one will ever hire you again." "It's over," Eliza said, her voice stronger now despite her trembling hands. "The evidence is already out there. Multiple copies, multiple locations. You can't destroy them all." Redmond's eyes darted between Eliza and the door, calculation warring with fury on his face. The mother dog's continued growls filled the tense silence. The sound of approaching sirens filtered through the clinic walls. Redmond's face went pale, then red with rage. He took a threatening step forward, but the mother dog's savage bark stopped him short. "They'll never believe you," he spat. A newcomer against a respected local doctor? You've got nothing but copies of files you stole and a worthless stray that should have died days ago." Eliza stood her ground, the kitten's warm weight against her chest, giving her strength. "I have the truth, and I have evidence of what you just did here." She nodded toward the security camera in the corner, the one Redmond had installed himself but clearly forgotten in his rage. The sirens grew louder. Redmond's shoulders sagged as the fight seemed to drain out of him, replaced by a cold, calculating hatred. "This isn't finished," he warned, backing toward the door. "Yes," Eliza said quietly. "It is." The mother dog maintained her protective stance as heavy boots echoed in the hallway. Behind them, the kitten stirred, letting out a tiny mew that seemed to say more than all the violent confrontation that had come before. Eliza's hands were still shaking, her heart racing, but her resolve had never been stronger. Through the window, she could see Jonas leading the sheriff and his deputies toward the clinic entrance. The mother dog pressed against her leg, a solid reminder of the fierce loyalty that had helped her survive this far. Among the shattered glass and spilled medicines, standing in the aftermath of violence, Eliza held tight to both the fragile kitten and her unshakable principles. Eliza's hands moved with desperate precision as she prepared for the emergency procedure. The kitten's breathing had become dangerously shallow, its tiny body still fighting the poison that coursed through its system. Time was running out. "Stay with me, little one," she whispered, carefully inserting a smaller oxygen tube while checking vital signs. The mother dog whined softly, pressing closer to the examination table. Jonas burst through the door, his face flushed from running. "Sheriff Matthews is 3 minutes away," he reported breathlessly. "I've got all the evidence organized. The contaminated feed samples, the doctored invoices, everything. Go!" Eliza urged, not looking up from her work. "I've got to stabilize this kitten now or we'll lose it. The sheriff needs to see those documents before Redmond destroys more evidence." The sound of tearing paper and Redmond's angry muttering echoed from his office down the hall. The acrid smell of smoke began to drift through the clinic. Jonas hesitated. "What if he comes back?" The mother dog growled reassuringly, taking up her protective stance near the door. Her message was clear. No one would get past her again. "We'll be okay," Eliza assured him. "The dog's got my back. Go." As Jonas's footsteps faded, Eliza focused entirely on the critical procedure before her. The kitten's organs were showing signs of shutting down. She had one chance to get this right. With steady hands, she administered a precise combination of medications through the tiny IV line. "Come on, sweetheart," she coaxed, monitoring every slight change. "Fight for me." The kitten's breath hitched, then grew fainter. Eliza's heart clenched. "No, no, no," she muttered, adjusting the oxygen flow. "Don't give up now. We've come too far." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. The mother dog's ears perked up, but she maintained her vigilant watch at the door. The sound of breaking glass and cursing erupted from Redmond's office, followed by heavy footsteps in the hallway. The mother dog's growl deepened, her muscles tensing. Eliza kept working, trying to block out everything except the fragile life beneath her hands. She could hear Redmond's frantic movements getting closer, but she couldn't spare a moment's attention. The kitten's survival hung by a thread. "Hold on," she whispered, administering another careful dose of medication. "Just hold on a little. Longer!" The clinic's front doors burst open with a bang. Multiple sets of boots thundered down the hallway. "Stop right there!" a commanding voice ordered. "Hands where we can see them!" Redmond's voice rose in protest, quickly drowned out by the sounds of a struggle. "You don't understand. She's trying to ruin me. Those records are private property." "Private property you were burning, Dr. Redmond?" Jonas's voice cut through clearly. "The feed invoices that prove you knew the grain was contaminated?" More shuffling, and the distinct sound of handcuffs clicking into place filled the air. The mother dog relaxed slightly, but remained at her post. Eliza held her breath, watching the kitten's chest. 1 second passed. 2, 3. Then, finally, a steady rise and fall. The tiny body grew stronger with each breath, color returning to, "It's gums, that's it," she encouraged softly, tears of relief filling her eyes. "That's it, little fighter." Sheriff Matthews appeared in the doorway, taking in the scene. The mother dog gave him a once-over before deciding he wasn't a threat. "Dr. Hartwell," he said gravely, "we've got Redmond in custody. Jonas showed us everything. The tainted feed sales, the covered-up deaths, all of it." He glanced at the kitten. "How's your patient?" Eliza smiled, gently stroking the kitten's now steady side. "Getting stronger by the minute. The evidence of poisoning in this little one helped expose everything else. Sometimes the smallest victims tell the biggest truths." The sheriff nodded, watching as the mother dog returned to nuzzle the kitten. "Never seen anything quite like this? A stray dog bringing in a poisoned kitten. Guess some animals know more about doing right than some people do." 2 deputies led Redmond past the door in handcuffs. His face was twisted with rage, his sleeves still stained with blood from the dog bite. "You'll never prove anything," he shouted. "It's all circumstantial." The mother dog's answering growl made him flinch and hurry along. Jonas returned, his face glowing with satisfaction. "The sheriff's got everything, including security footage of Redmond selling the contaminated feed. It's over." He moved closer to check the kitten. "How's our little survivor?" "Getting stronger every minute," Eliza reported proudly. "The emergency treatment worked. Once the poison is fully cleared from its system, this little one should make a complete recovery." The mother dog wagged her tail as if understanding the good news. She gently licked the kitten's head, her previous fierceness replaced by tender care. Sunlight streamed through the clinic windows, catching the mother dog's fur and the kitten's whiskers. In that moment of victory, Eliza felt the weight of fear and tension finally lift from her shoulders. Justice had been served, lives had been saved, and the truth had come to light. The kitten's steady breathing filled the quiet room, each rise and fall a testament to resilience, courage, and the unshakable bond between the most unlikely of families. What had begun with a desperate rescue on a stormy morning had ended in triumph, proving that even the smallest life could spark the greatest change. The next morning dawned with a gentle clarity that felt symbolic after the previous day's chaos. Golden sunlight streamed through the clinic windows, warming the quiet examination room where Eliza sat watching her unlikely patients. The mother dog lay curled protectively around the kitten, both sleeping peacefully on a thick blanket. The kitten's breathing was strong and steady now, its tiny body no longer struggling against the poison that had nearly claimed its life. The mother dog's scarred face looked softer in sleep, her fierce protective instincts temporarily at rest. Eliza rubbed her tired eyes, still processing everything that had happened. Sheriff Matthews had taken Redmond away in handcuffs, along with boxes of evidence documenting years of corruption. The tainted feed sales, the covered-up animal deaths, all of it would finally face justice. Jonas appeared in the doorway, carrying 2 steaming cups of coffee. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, but his face glowed with satisfaction. "Thought you could use this?" he said quietly, handing her a cup. "Thanks." Eliza accepted it gratefully. "Have you slept at all?" "A little, in the break room." He settled into the chair beside her, watching the sleeping animals. "You know, I always knew something wasn't right with Redmond, but I never had the courage to dig deeper. Not like you did." Eliza shook her head. "I was scared, too. For so long, I just kept my head down, trying not to make waves. It took this little one," she nodded toward the kitten, "to make me finally stand up for what's right." "You were amazing," Jonas said softly. "The way you fought for them, even when Redmond threatened your job. Even when he trailed off, glancing at her bruised arm where Redmond had grabbed her. "I couldn't let fear win anymore," Eliza replied. "Not when lives were at stake. Being a healer isn't just about following orders, it's about protecting those who can't protect themselves." The mother dog stirred, opening one eye to check on them before settling back to sleep. The kitten snuggled closer against her warm fur. "You know," Jonas said thoughtfully, "watching you these past few days has taught me something important. It's not enough to just notice what's wrong. We have to be brave enough to act." Eliza smiled, feeling a new sense of confidence settle over her. "For years I let Redmond make me doubt myself. I was so afraid of losing my job, of making mistakes. But now I see that standing up for what's right is more important than playing it safe. The clinic will be different now," Jonas noted. "Better. The board's already talking about making you the new head veterinarian." Eliza felt a flutter of excitement at the possibility. No more being undermined or second-guessed. No more watching, helplessly as animals suffered under Redmond's cruel policies. "Look at them," she said softly, gesturing to the sleeping pair. "A stray dog and an abandoned kitten, creating their own family. They remind me that sometimes the most beautiful things come from the hardest challenges." The mother dog's tail thumped gently against the blanket, as if agreeing. The kitten stretched in its sleep, tiny paws extending trustingly toward its unlikely protector. "They're not the only ones who've transformed," Jonas observed. "You're different too, Eliza. Stronger, more sure of yourself." She nodded, feeling the truth of his words. The timid vet who had started this journey would never have dared to challenge Redmond or risk everything for a dying kitten. But that version of herself was gone, replaced by someone who knew her own worth and the importance of her calling. "It's a new beginning," she said. "For all of us." The morning light strengthened, filling the room with warmth and promise. Outside, birds sang their morning songs, and the air felt clean and fresh after the storm. Inside, Eliza watched over her sleeping patients, finally at peace with her choices and ready to embrace whatever challenges lay ahead. The mother dog and kitten had shown her what true courage looked like. Not the absence of fear, but the determination to push through it for something greater than herself. Their survival wasn't just a medical victory. It was a testament to the power of compassion over cruelty, of principle over profit. If today's story echoed in your heart, I hope you'll stay, subscribe, and I'll be here again tomorrow with another quiet story full of the kind of love that lasts.